Hello, welcome to this second episode looking back at the Alphabet of Britishness. So I'm looking at the second episode this week, which was B is for Bloody Hell. By this point, I'd opened up to my Instagram and to some Facebook groups asking people in the Alphabet of Britishness, what does B stand for? And I was flooded with messages, quite a lot of them with rude and naughty words. B is for Bloody Hell, I went as the polite one, but I also had things like blimey and balderdash. And I said in the initial podcast, I don't know anyone who says blimey in all seriousness, but it does seem to be a very, very British thing, a very old-fashioned thing. I was messaged by a few people who said that they do say blimey in their day-to-day life. Unironically, it's not a humorous thing, they just say it. And I find that interesting. We all live in our own little worlds, right? It's the thing that maybe all my friends say this, but in my case, I've never heard someone say this. So I find that very, very interesting. This is all about this kind of the shared experience of this podcast. I ask questions and I'm getting really good feedback from a lot of these. So on the podcast, I normally have something fairly academic, something that I've studied, because again, I'm asking people, what do you think it is? And sometimes it's something that I haven't thought about, perhaps I'd never think about. And so I spend maybe a week looking into it and trying the best as I can to come out with some kind of piece on it to share. And then here on the YouTube, I'm not using any notes, I'm just giving my own personal reaction again. I just listened to the episode, B is for Bloody Hell, and now I'm thinking about it. I really appreciate that some people were talking about British fashion, like Barber jackets, which I always think of as a farmer's jacket, but I know that James Bond turned it into like a real fashion jacket in the movie Skyfall. Bell staff as well, classic British brand. But again, it was the rude words that really seemed to capture people's, and it was only my second week of doing this, so I was slightly worried that if every time I did this, people would be messaging me offensive words. I thought maybe this is the law of the internet. You ask a question, that's what you get. But that wasn't the case. It was really just for buh, which is interesting. Buh is a plosive sound, buh and puh. And it's interesting that in most languages, I'm a linguist. I worked as a translator, Turkish to English. I've worked as a language teacher at the University of Bradford. I taught English to international students, and I managed a language center in China. So language has really been my life for the last decade or more. I've been studying Turkish now for over 20 years. Most languages, buh and puh, are the strong sounds, and often, the exclamations, the rude words. And it's interesting that actually in most languages, the word for father is baba or papa, or something like that. It starts with a plosive, and most of the words for mother start with a ma, like mama. Again, in Chinese, it's mama. So I found that interesting. And again, these are different words that were often being used locally. I think the person who used blimey lives on the south coast of England, so maybe that's part of the north-south divide. So B was also for Battle of Britain, and I think that's interesting. Because that's something that's very much taught in our schools. We have, say, the Battle of Hastings, the Battle for Britain, and in 1940, the battle in the skies over England, mainly the south of England, which we call the Battle of Britain. I recommended in the podcast edition the 1960s movie and also the documentary, The World at War, if you want a real serious take on it. But I think that's a large part of, I guess, for my generation, our upbringing, reading about it and watching it. For an older generation, it was actually watching it in the sky. The battle for our own country was visible above their heads. And of course, there's great movies and TV shows about it, which is often how we share about our culture. It really is, I say, the media in which we share this. And that's how I'm sharing it now on YouTube. So, as I say, this was the main thing. It was all the B is for Bloody Hell, Belstaff, that was a really good one. And Brownsea Island, I think, was a very good one because it also included Baden-Powell. I think there's a lot of things that if you just look at the life of Baden-Powell, it feels very, very British. He was an upstanding Victorian hero. He, of course, was a hero at the Siege of Mafeking, the war in South Africa in about 1900. Oh, I'm not going off notes. It's the beginning of the 20th century. And then later on, he set up the Boy Scouts, so another B. And again, his little camping trip to Brownsea Island kind of really got to engage with working with young boys. He ended up writing the book Scouting for Boys, one of the best-selling books of all time, in fact, and one of the most influential in terms of setting out what boys should do so they could have real skills when they're men. And it's an international organisation. I mentioned in the podcast again that I was walking down the street in Hong Kong, and the Boy Scout building is huge. It's a real landmark in Kowloon, and anytime I got lost, I just looked for the fleur-de-lis, which was lit purple at night. It's a very reassuring sight, I guess, for me. I've stayed in that hotel, actually. I desperately needed somewhere to stay one night. But anyway, it's a really, really a cool building. And as I say, it's nice just to see that Baden-Powell still has like his footprint all over the world. In fact, at the Boy Scout kind of hotel I stayed in, I saw the little museum, and they had kind of effects from when Baden-Powell had actually visited Hong Kong. He was a very, very international traveller at a time when that really wasn't so common. He did a lot of good, and again, I really liked it's Baden-Powell, it's Boy Scouts, and Brownsea Island, the place where it all started. This ended up being one of the most satisfying episodes. I say it was one of the first times getting so many suggestions, and later on, we start to get into the stride as I try and sort through kind of what suggestions that I was good to take. So yeah, this has been a fantastic project, the Alphabet of Britishness. Of course, you can comment below. Perhaps you have another B that I didn't cover here or didn't cover in the podcast version. And again, I'm very interested in your personal take on this, because this is, I say, it's not so much me explaining British culture. I'm asking what is Britishness? You can hear that I am British, but most of my adult life has been spent outside the UK. So this is really an exploration, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying exploring British culture very, very much. Yeah, B is for bloody hell. That was a good one. I'm looking forward to reviewing the next one.